Hello, everybody. Intro.
For your goodness and your grace, and the wonders of your ways, and the miracles you constantly amaze me with.
Hi, it's us again. We're back, as they say. Tega and I are here for another mentoring moment with you. And thank you for all the response. We get so much great feedback from you guys, and it's really encouraging. And I love the fact that you're beginning to write in topics that you want us to address because we want to give you what you need and what you want to grow and be empowered to be your best you. That's why we do what we do. So thank you for all the responses and thank you for writing in and giving us topics to discuss with you. So what are we talking about today?
How to resolve conflict.
Okay.
I guess kind of talked about it in the last one. So if you haven't listened to the last podcast, listen to it. We talked about rejection.
Mm-hmm.
But today we want to talk about specifically how to resolve conflict.
Okay. Are you going to pick one for me?
What do you mean?
What kind of conflict?
Let's start with the bestseller, relationship conflict.
Okay, but what about it? There are lots of different types of conflict.
I don't know. Conflicts. What type of conflicts are there?
You brought up this topic. I'm just trying to roll with it now, girl.
Give me an example so I know what you're talking about.
Well, there are lots of disagreements and conflicts you can have in a relationship. You can have conflicts over money. You can have conflicts over sex. You can have conflicts over where you're going. How you're spending the holidays, family members. So I'm asking, what conflict are we talking about in specific?
Conflict about sex, baby.
No, we're not going to talk about sex today.
You said you're giving me options. Okay, conflicts about...
It's always about sex. I don't understand. Why is it always about sex?
Because that's what
sex
people want to hear.
Sex is the less underutilized engagement out of everything, and everybody's so fascinated and wrapped up with that, like there's nothing else going on in life.
Because that's what
shake
people talk
yourself,
about.
wake yourself. Anyway,
did you get it out?
I got it out.
Okay, start again. Shh. We're talking about conflict, resolving conflict in
Mm-hmm.
relationships, and just in life generally. How do you handle situation where there's a conflict of interest or conflict of anything in a situation? How do you?
Well, there are some basic ground rules.
Okay.
The first key to solving conflict is making the other person feel heard.
Number one, to resolving conflict is making the other person feel
heard.
How do you do that?
There's a difference between listening and hearing.
Mm-hmm.
We go through this all the time because I'm talking to her, and her nose is buried in her phone. And I'm going, are you listening to me? And she's like, mm-hmm. And
But
I'm like,
I am.
no. But see, I don't like that because if I'm that important to you, you're all in and you're focused on me. I feel valued when I get your full attention.
But don't I drop my phone and then pay attention to you? But I was listening.
But I've got to ask. That's the thing I'm talking about.
I'm sorry.
I don't feel heard. I feel as if I am another priority amongst other priorities, and there's something way more fascinating is going on the phone. And even if you're able to repeat back to me what you said, I don't know if you really internalized it, because there is listening and then there's active listening. And so you can actually hear and not hear.
Okay. Can we talk about how to resolve conflict?
We are talking about how to resolve conflict right now. We're talking about.
Oh, so that's a conflict?
Making the other person feel. Yeah, that's a conflict.
I always hear you every time. Even when you ask me, what did I say? I tell you what you said.
But sometimes you don't have
listening.
feedback because it didn't go all the way in. It didn't go all the way in. Okay? So back to the topic.
Thank you.
This is what happens
back to the
topic. Making the other person feel heard. Active listening, which means that it's not about you. You're not compiling your answer in your mind while they're talking. You are really literally hearing everything that they're saying. You are making them feel that it is important, right? And then you are responding, and you are drawing them out more and more by digging deeper into what they said as opposed to what you think and what your response is.
I think even the first one on basic ground rules of how to, that one requires a lot of self-mastery.
Yes, it is.
And
it is discipline.
Maturity. Right?
Yes.
It requires that a lot because and doesn't it, I mean, sometimes if it's in a relationship, people like to address things, differently. I just want to deal with it there and then and move on from it. But other people need time. So they'll tell you, give me time to process. I mean, what are you processing? Let's just trash this thing and move on with our life. Why do you want to process?
It's not all about you, Tega.
That's what I'm saying. That it takes a lot of. I feel like this whole resolving conflict thing is just switching into let's talk about Tega.
No, but when you bring up things like that, they're worthy of addressing. See, I'm listening. So. When one is anxious to just deal with the topic and move on and move past it.
No, it's not even about that. It just feels like this thing is hovering over us, right? That it's like, okay, can we talk about it and let this, whatever it is, let it lift so that we can start moving. If it's a relationship,
when a person feels completely heard is when they let go of something.
So that's so. Let me finish my point. So I had to learn that people need time to process whatever it is they're processing.
Yes.
So even in my anxiousness to say, oh, let's resolve this right now, I have to respect the other person's needs.
Yes.
And needs, and what other word is that? I have to respect the other person's needs to go through whatever it is and they're going through. And then I actually do find that works better because if we had maybe resolved it at the time where I just wanted to resolve it, my point would just be, okay, whatever, move on, right? She's like, I am listening. I'm making you feel heard as you're talking. Yes.
I'm really interested in what you have to say.
Go on.
You see, that's the thing. People want to know that you're interested in what they're saying.
But I think that even at the end of the day, if maybe I want to resolve it now and move on, if the person calms down and maybe I'm out of whatever it is, it depends on the situation. But at the end of the day, the person comes back to say, oh, now let's address this. I'll just be like, I don't care anymore. So you address, you talk,
but now explain. It's like about you again.
No, you address, you talk, and then I explain if it's something that I did that made the other person uncomfortable, whatever, and then they are saying this and I'm like, oh, but that wasn't my intention to what I mean is I'm in a more relaxed state of mind to address the thing because I am out of it.
You've released it.
Yeah, I cannot keep a grudge. Well, I can if I want to.
You're happy sanguine.
Yeah. But
short attention span.
Yeah,
it's too much work to hold on to it.
Even if if I don't let it go and I don't say anything, it will come out in my
very much so.
And half of the time, it's not my intention. I'm like, okay, we're choosing our battles. What do we want to address? What don't we want to address? Okay, this is not important to address. Just let it go. But somehow, somewhere, it's like it just comes out in my...
It's because you're carrying it. It's still inside of you. So that is what comes out.
I'm like, I'm not addressing it. It doesn't.
You might intellectually feel that you've divorced yourself, but you're still in your feelings in that. And so
now I'm not reacting with my feelings.
But you are.
I'm not. I didn't say it. It's just, that meme that says, even if I don't say anything, my face does the talking.
So you're still in your feelings.
Maybe not.
That's the issue. That you're in denial now.
No,
No, seriously. As long as it's on your face, then it's inside of you.
maybe
If it's nothing
but I
there,
don't want to
nothing's
address
on your
it though.
face.
I don't want to have to talk
Right,
about
but
it.
then say that. Don't say that you're over it. You're not ready to address it.
No,
That's
not
a
ready.
different-
I don't want to ever address it.
You don't want to address it.
Yeah,
So
it's
that
just
is
past.
a whole other thing. You understand?
And it's not like I don't want to address it because it's a grudge. I've just learned to, what do I want to fight? What do I want to?
Right, but it also creates an attitude. So it needs to be dealt with.
How?
Period.
I just don't want to address it. It's just gonna pass, and then
It will never
pass.
pass.
Yeah.
It will sit there like the elephant in the room.
Why would it sit there after it's gone?
It's not gone.
Yes. There's some
Anything that is
does-
not addressed is still present.
I don't agree though. In that sense, because sometimes in like life
It will come back
conflicts,
up,
Why?
which means it never went anywhere.
somebody does
happens.
something to me, and then I have decided, oh, I don't want to talk about this, and maybe comes out in maybe my.
In the way you deal with that person.
But I moved past that situation. It's not there. It's not.
But it's
sitting
still
there
in the air, Tega. You have a very strong personality.
I agree.
And you shift atmospheres.
I-
Even when you don't say anything. Sometimes you're not saying something is worse than you saying something.
Is it?
You think you're past it, but you're not. And everyone in the room feels it. But you've decided in your brain somewhere that you've let it go. And you haven't. You're now manifesting it in a different way and creating a whole other energy with that thing.
But that's not an intention.
I know it's not your intention, but it is reality. We're talking about dealing with conflict, and we're talking about the reality of dealing with conflict. And in conflict, it must be dealt with.
Every
It cannot
single
be
thing.
Yes, it cannot be swept under the rug.
Okay,
It
so-
will resurface.
Okay, I have a question. What's the difference between conflict and, I don't know the word to use, maybe somebody's just acting out of pocket, or the person did something that's out of pocket for you, and it's not necessarily a conflict. It's not necessarily
It is a
something
conflict
that
if it-
I
if-
want to
if it's
sit
something-
down and let's address it. I feel like there's.
I think that's kind of cultural, but it's not healthy and it doesn't work.
What do you mean cultural? Like I'm not that type of culture that say let's not talk about anything.
Yes.
I don't know if maybe I'm not articulating my thoughts. I'm just saying in the growth process of life, normally I would want to address every single thing that is happening in my relationship with people,
It depends.
no matter what it is.
Okay.
But then right now I am saying that there are some things that would happen between a relationship that I have with somebody.
Mhm.
Although I'm highly irritated or whatever by whatever that person has done, I have decided that this is something that would pass, and I'm done with
and
this,
it's not worth
and
it.
it's not worth.
Okay, but have you, in that instance, have you done what I suggested earlier?
making the other person feel hurt?
No. Let me finish.
Okay.
Active listening. Have you examined what made you feel that way? And if there are any grounds there for you to continue to feel that way. Because sometimes we feel some way. And if we stop and think about it, you know what? It really wasn't what I thought at first.
In that moment of my irritation, maybe not. But in, like, let's say in the next day or the next hour or whatever,
24 hours, okay.
24 hours,
Mhm.
and then I'm like, you know what, guys, really not that deep.
Right. Then that's fine.
That's what I'm saying. That okay, before the 24 hours time, that I will say I don't want to talk about it.
Right,
and then
but-
I have decided that this is not something I want to address. But then it comes out in my aura. Why am I putting aura in quotes?
But that
But
was the only thing that I was addressing. I understood what you said. So I think that what we've got to do is unpack this so that people listening don't get confused, because
Mhm.
it was a bit confusing.
Mhm.
First of all, conflict. If there's an issue that you have with someone and you don't feel good about it and it's affecting your response to them, and even how you feel internally, you need to discuss that. And when you do, it should not come from a place of accusation. It should come from a place of presenting a need to them. That, when this occurred, it made me feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how you meant for this to go?
Mm-hmm.
Usually that person will say, absolutely not. I'm so sorry I made you feel that way. And you're able to now have a conversation about the whole event without anybody getting upset and reaching a place of understanding and reconciliation.
Mm-hmm.
There's another space where someone does something that you don't like, but you stop and you catch your breath and you count to 10 and you think about it and go, now, wait a minute, why didn't I like that? You know what? That person probably did not mean it the way I took it initially. Okay, so I'm just going to let that go.
Mm-hmm.
Fine. And you really do let it go.
Yeah.
But there's another type where you go, you know what? I don't even want to deal with this person. But every time you see that person, it's like inside of you. Then it's a conflict at some point you are going to have to address because the thing is still there and it's creating a root of bitterness.
Mm-hmm. But that's not the third one. What we're talking about in the beginning is, for me, it's not the third one of, it's creating
Was it the second one?
No, it's the first one of, it's the second one of count to 10.
Right. So
It's
I'm
not
just
that deep.
giving them the three scenarios because it was confusing.
Okay.
We got stuck in one area
Mm-hmm.
and there are a couple of different things going on there.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to be able to be clear about which one is it.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the thing that you can absolutely let go? And I'm not going to feel it in the atmosphere, in the air whenever we come back together.
Mm-hmm.
Versus the one where you've decided you're not talking about it, but you're still carrying it and it affects the atmosphere.
Yeah.
That's still a conflict. That's an unresolved conflict.
So I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
How is it, because in my mind, is it not for me, I feel like it's a normal human reaction, even when it's not that deep, but I still feel a certain type of way, but I know it will pass. How do you navigate through the time before the offense, whatever it is lifted? How do you navigate through the time?
Now, this is a good example because I said how to do it. I said you have to stop and listen and think about why you feel the way you feel and evaluate if your feelings are accurate. If the thought that created the feeling is really true. Is it true?
I heard you. It's a good example as well. It is true. Whatever. It's not that deep. It wasn't me. It had nothing to do with me. But I still feel,
You still haven't
Right?
heard me. No. Because I should be able to unpack that feeling. I'm trying to think of an example or something.
Let me give you an example. Before we did this whole taping, when you said something about what I wore, and you told me to change it, we had the whole exchange there.
Mm-hmm.
And you said something that really, it wasn't, I was like, it's just mommy being mommy. In my head, it was annoying, but I was like, oh, it's just mommy being mommy. So I went upstairs. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to change because it wasn't even working. Like I was trying to record myself. There was noise, whatever. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to come and just film myself taping them. I may do the intro later. It was just a moment of, oh, that's just how. It's sort of annoyed me, but I was like, whatever, right? And then the next day, you tell me I had an attitude that night because she says, I'm like, it wasn't an attitude. It was just,
But it was an attitude at the moment.
But it wasn't something that it was, okay, here's the question.
I mean, you then
How do
stopped
you
and
navigate?
explained it because now that's a good example because I confronted you about it. And I said, I felt you had an attitude. And you said, no, I didn't have an attitude. I actually was a little annoyed at the time when you said that. But then I got over it. And I said, what? I said, oh, okay. And that deflated and diffused the whole thing. So that is why I say it is important to bring those things out and not harbor them. Because I could have walked around thinking you had an attitude And that would have projected that attitude onto the rest of the day and
Mhm.
maybe the next day and the next day if I hadn't said anything about it.
Mhm.
Now, the only place that reality existed was in my mind. It wasn't even true. It was based on how I felt,
Mhm.
how I felt about the air and about the way you responded. But was it really true? It was not.
Okay.
So that is why it is important, if you cannot settle it within yourself, to go back to that person and say, I felt a little kind of some way when this happened. Now, is that accurate? And they'll say yes or no.
Mhm.
They might say yes because blah, 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 blah. Well, then you're going to have a different kind of conversation.
Yeah.
But you're still going to come to a resolution that hopefully will be reconciliatory.
Mhm.
Or they'll say no. And you'll go, oh, okay, moving on. Next.
Gotcha.
So I think that most conflict lives in the mind of the conflicted, as opposed
Most
to
conflict
being,
lives in the mind of the conflicted. That's true.
instead of being an actual grounds for a real conflict.
Okay.
Most conflicts are, the root of them are misunderstanding,
Mhm.
an understanding that was missed about a series of events that took place.
Mm-hmm. That's good. So, when there's a ground for the conflict to happen, how do you navigate through that?
I just said that,
You said
Tega.
no. You said most conflicts are
I said
in the
confront it.
mind of the
I
conflicted.
said talk to the person.
How do you approach? Okay, the question is, how do you approach it? You said
Are
make
you
the
all
other
seeing
person.
what's going
You
on
no.
here?
You said make the other person feel heard. I heard you.
Did I not say go to the person and say, I was feeling a little some way about this thing when it happened? Did I read that wrong? Did I
guess-
not? I've said
guess-
that about 2 or 3 times.
I
now.
guess my question is
Wow.
the tone.
Active listening.
I guess why I'm asking is because we have the tendency to just go and say, you know what, you did this, you did this, you did this, that. Like the approach of this is like, whoa, you're attacking me right now. I want you to talk about, do you want to fight? How the other thing that you're saying. That's what I want
hear
you to say.
Well, no, I mean, like I said, I would go to the person and say, I felt a little kind of this way
Mm-hmm.
when this happened. Am I off here, or what happened with us? I mean, I think that I said it earlier. I said submit a need rather than accuse. I did say that earlier as well.
I heard you when you said submit a
Okay.
need. And most of the time, after you submitted that need, then the person said, oh, no, not at all. I heard you.
Okay, so that's how you deal with it.
Okay.
Make sure that you're submitting a need and not demanding and not confronting and putting them in a place where they feel they have to defend themselves. Because as soon as they start defending themselves, they don't really hear you, and then it leads to greater misunderstanding.
So, you tell me that you've said it too.
Jesus, help me keep it near the cross.
You tell me just now that you said it.
What?
I want you to give people, like, if it's like 2 ways for them to gather themselves together before they address the situation, right? I'm saying that because I have an example in my mind. The person that I was dating, we were also working together. And we're working one time and he was absolutely doing rubbish, right? But in my mind, I thought my addressing it would be, don't say anything and wait till afterwards. And that included completely shutting, blocking. Like, not if, like, it's like he doesn't exist until we are done from this.
Did that help with the production?
It blew up afterwards. So I'm saying, but what I thought I was doing was calming down and addressing the situation later. But what I was actually doing was
Building up.
and maybe gathering my points in my head, if we're being completely honest with ourselves. So how would you teach somebody to gather themselves together before they present the need? Breathing exercises, count 1 to 10 and breathe. In and out. Maybe go for a walk. Maybe eat some food. What would you say? How would you do it? What
I
would you
think it
do?
depends on the person, but I think that you always have to keep the goal in mind. What do I want to accomplish here in this relationship?
Mm-hmm.
How am I going to get that done? Now, in this situation where we're working and this person isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing, am I going to allow my resentment to build up through the whole thing and explode? Or am I going to stop and say, hey, you know what? I really need you to do this right now.
But they're not hearing you though.
Are they? You didn't ask. You said that you just kept going and you
But you are
and
you
you
are
let
you
it blow
don't you
up
don't you
later.
have sense to do it way before?
Obviously he didn't have sense to do it. And he needed a little guidance with what needed to be done. I really believe that most people, if they knew better, they do better. And so, I think that it's unfair to make an assumption that
You're
someone
right.
knows something. And as an author, the first rule of thought, I'm helping someone with a book now. And I said, first rule of thought is, I hate to say it, but you've got to write from the viewpoint that people don't know anything. And that's not being mean, but what it does is keeps you, it keeps you cognizant of the fact that you can't assume what your reader knows. Therefore, you have to make sure you give them all the information. If you're working with someone and they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, they're probably doing what they thought was good to do. If they knew more than that, they would have done more than that. And so it's not fair, actually.
Okay,
It's a little high-minded and egotistical.
I
right?
know we've talked about it's not with you, but I've admitted
Pride.
it and have moved on from
It's
that.
pride
Okay.
and high-mindedness.
Okay.
When
But
we're humble,
if
when we're
the-
walking
if the
humbly
situation-
with people, and we assume they didn't know, and we go and we tell them, this isn't working. Can we try this? Now, if they get all hanky about it after you've asked, then there's another issue, and it might be in the way you did it, why can't I talk today? The way you made them feel, you made them feel less than nothing, that does not help them want to serve you and help you.
But what if it is a reoccurring thing?
It
I
takes
think-
people sometimes to learn something.
I think that's what the issue
They're
was
slow
with me at the
learners.
time. It was just a reoccurring thing. It's like every single time you.
And we're probably all guilty of that on some level. There are things I tell you a lot over and over again as well.
But it's not with money though.
It's with things that are important to me.
Okay, this podcast is over.
It's just to prove the point that we all do it, Miss Tega.
Do we?
Yes, we do,
we
including
don't.
you. None of us are perfect. None of us. And when we embrace that, it releases us to learn and it releases us to help others grow. And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, we'll release people to learn and grow when we are 63. Right now, we have to teach some people a lesson. No, kidding.
Oh
Cut
my
that out
gosh.
of the edit.
Mm-mm.
See, I feel like this resolving conflict comes more with maturity. You know what I mean?
Well, it
Because-
does. It
So
because it
I-
requires discipline.
Yeah.
It requires self-discipline to solve conflict. You cannot live in your feelings and solve conflict at the same time. No, you can't.
So but that's for a millennial. That's not an excuse to go about yelling at people and misbehaving. But I try to afford myself that mercy and grace. If after I think about the situation and I say, "Oh, I probably should have reacted differently," I try to do self-care in that moment to say, but you didn't know better at the time. Okay, I think we're done. There's nothing else to say. Do you have anything else you want to say about resolving conflict? We talked about just one, make the other person feel heard. Maybe we'll do a part 2 because it's late in the night.
I just think that it's important in solving conflict. I just think that it's important when seeking to resolve conflict that it not be about you, that it still be about serving the other person, and that the goal be reconciliation versus you trying to prove a point. As I always say, you can prove a point, stand on principle, and end up standing alone. That is not the goal. The goal is to come to a place where you both understand one another and come to a mutual understanding that makes everyone filled with peace and joy. and reconciliation. And I think that if that is the goal, that all the other pieces will fall in place and that you'll approach one another with mercy and grace, that you'll be able to speak the truth in love, that you'll be able to submit needs as opposed to demanding and confronting a way that causes the other person to feel they need to defend themselves. And when you're both in an atmosphere where you're open to talk and really hear one another, being interested in what the person is saying, giving them your undivided attention, practicing empathic listening, which is literally repeating back what they said so that they know that you heard them, then the ground is set for love to grow and flourish.
And putting down your phone when she's talking to you, even though you're listening, doesn't make her feel heard and prioritized.
It's just rude.
Millennials, please support me in the comment section.
It's a very rude thing, millennials. I will not move off of that one. There's a time to be on the phone. And I'm going to tell you, if you can't let go of that phone, it's a God. Let it go. Put it down. Divorce yourself. Feel the freedom of not being attached to that phone.
We're not attached to the phone.
Yes, you are attached to the phone. You know, I come from an era where we didn't have those phones, and people actually went out to restaurants and sat and looked at each other the entire 2 hours and talked to each other the entire 2 hours.
We can talk.
You go and look at what happens at restaurants now. Everyone is on the phone. It's disgusting. I think it's a subtle trick of the devil to break down communication. It breaks up fellowship. There is nothing godly or holy about it. The phone it's a wonderful device. When you're away, you've got it. You can reach people for emergency. But to spend your time with someone gazing into your phone, there's something very wrong and very broken about that. And I'm challenging you to exercise the power to put down your phone when you're with people and really listen and hear. There is a big difference. So now, if we've blessed you today, I hope that you will subscribe, share, and send a donation to this ministry. We're trying to buy a new camera. And everything that you give helps us with that. And we have merchandise, fabulous stuff, t-shirts, mugs, masks, you name it. That's another way that you can support the ministry. I can buy Tega a present, not another phone. We'll see you next time.